Welcome to the podcast that must not be named. I'm Luke.
I'm Melissa.
And we are doing Chapter 7 of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, The Sorting Hat. This chapter is 18 pages, 5.83%.
The door to Hogwarts Castle swings open, and it's none other than our old friend, Professor McGonagall, at the door. She leads the first years through the large, impressive entrance hall to a small room to wait. She gives the newbies a brief overview of what being in a house means and tells them that they will be sorted in front of the rest of the school, who are already waiting. The first years speculate on how they will be sorted, but don't share too many ideas before flocks of ghosts filter in through the walls. After being greeted by some of the ghosts, the newbies are ushered into line by Professor McGonagall. They walk into the great hall, lit by self-floating candles. 4 long tables are parallel to each other and are full of kids, and at the opposite end from the door is a long head table for the teachers. This is where the first years are led, and they stand in front of the school as a beat-up old hat is placed in front of them. The hat begins to sing, and lists the qualities of each house. Gryffindor is brave, Hufflepuff is loyal, Ravenclaw is wise, and Slytherin is cunning. And says that he, the hat, will sort the students. People are sorted into houses by wearing the hat on their head, with Hermione and Ron going to Gryffindor along with Harry. After Harry had a quick conversation with the hat about avoiding Slytherin, Professor Dumbledore gives a short speech, nitwit, blubber, oddment, tweak, and food magically appears on the table. More food than Harry had ever seen in one place before. He then meets the resident Gryffindor ghost, whose nickname is Nearly Headless Nick, due to an improper beheading. As the feast goes on, Harry talks to several people, but has an odd moment with one of the teachers. As Harry looks at the head table, he sees Professor Quirrell talking to another teacher. As that teacher looks at Harry, a sharp pain shoots across Harry's scar. Percy tells him that that teacher is Professor Snape. Then Dumbledore gives a few school notices, including stay out of the forest, no magic in the hallways between classes, Quidditch tryouts, and accessing the right-hand third-floor corridor will result in dying. This is followed by the singing of the school song, to a variety of self-directed tunes, and the students are dismissed to their dormitories. The first-year Gryffindors travel with Prefect Percy through the castle to the entrance of Gryffindor Tower, guarded by the portrait of the Fat Lady. Along the way, they meet Peeves the Poltergeist. The first years head to bed, and Harry falls quickly to sleep, but dreams that Professor Quirrell's turban had told him to switch to Slytherin. Harry rolls over and doesn't remember the dream again.
We met a lot of characters in this chapter. A lot of students, several teachers, and several ghosts. Do you want to go through the students that were sorted first?
I will. So we're going to start with the students in alphabetical order, which I appreciate.
She did a good job with that. She actually did.
They put them in order. I like that. So the students sorted. Hannah Abbott.
Who went to Hufflepuff.
Susan Bones.
Also Hufflepuff.
Terry Boot.
Went to Ravenclaw.
Mandy Brocklehurst.
Also Ravenclaw.
Lavender Brown.
Was the first new Gryffindor.
Millicent Bulstrode.
Becomes the first Slytherin.
Justin Finch Fletchley.
Hufflepuff.
Seamus Finnegan.
Gryffindor.
Marag McDougal.
We don't know which house he went into.
Somebody whose last name is Moon, who has no first name.
Which we don't know where they go.
Right. Somebody whose last name is Not.
Same thing. Not sure where they went to.
Somebody whose last name is Parkinson.
We don't know where that student went either.
And then the twins, Patil and Patil.
Again, we don't know.
Then Sally Ann Perks.
Don't know where she goes either.
Dean Thomas.
Goes into Gryffindor.
Lisa Turpin.
Who becomes a Ravenclaw.
And Blaze Zabini.
Rounds us out and goes to Slytherin.
Now, before you all freak out on us, we know we didn't list every person who was sorted because we have already met Hermione and Ron and Neville and Harry, who all went to Gryffindor.
Correct.
And we've also already met Draco Malfoy and Crabbe and Goyle, who don't have first names either, and all three of those went to Slytherin. So there were some other characters that arrived in this. The first I want to talk about are the ghosts. There were about 20 ghosts who came into the small room off of the Great Hall where the first years were waiting. Only 3 of them got names. One of them was the Fat Friar, who is the Hufflepuff ghost. Another one was the Bloody Baron. And then we have the resident ghost of Gryffindor, whose name is Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington. However, everyone knows him as Nearly Headless Nick. Another character who's introduced, who's ghost-like but not quite, is Peeves, the mischievous poltergeist that first years run into on their way back to the dorm.
3 other speaking parts that we have in this chapter are 1, the Sorting Hat.
Singing hats.
Singing Hat, the Hogwarts Sorting Hat. Professor Snape, who was talking to Quirrell, who we've met before. And the Portrait of a Fat Woman in Pink.
Portraits talk, apparently. We knew they moved.
Yeah, apparently they can converse as well.
All right.
Some mentions that we have in this chapter, people that were spoken about but we didn't actually meet, are Seamus's dad, who's a muggle, his mom, who is a witch, and surprised his dad that after they got married that she was a witch.
Oh, honey, by the way.
Great Uncle Algie and Great Aunt Enid, who are related to Neville. Mr. Filch, and Madam Hooch. The locations that were introduced in this chapter include the entrance hall. After they go through the door, they go into a gigantic entrance hall. They then move into a small chamber where they're waiting to go into the Great Hall, which is the third location that we go to. They also walk through the corridors up to the Portrait of the Fat Lady. And they actually go through the Gryffindor common room and into the boys' dormitory.
2 places were mentioned. One was Blackpool Pier and the 3rd floor corridor on the right-hand side.
Which is out of bounds.
And to anyone who doesn't wish to die a painful and slow death.
That sounds delightful.
Yeah, let's go there.
So we do have some new magicabulary. These are JK inventions or magical uses of words in the stories that include all 4 houses, Gryffindor and Slytherin, which we have heard before, but we get a much better feeling of what that actually means to be sorted into one of these houses. Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw are the other 2. Another term that we hear is the Hogwarts sorting ceremony. We get to see that a little more up close.
Singing cats.
The House Cup. Potions, which is a class, and Transfiguration, which is another class. And we also have another book mention, no author, but the first mention of Hogwarts, A History.
All right, so in for our in-depth analysis, I'm going to go ahead and start off. I just want to put a bet out there to all the people that when the first years are sitting in the room and McGonagall comes in and tells them to smarten themselves up and talks about the different houses or talks about the houses and talks about how you earn points and you have to do this, I guarantee you, this is my bet, that only Hermione will remember what she said. That all the other kids will be too nervous to be like, wait, I have no idea, but Hermione will be able to, word for word, recall that speech.
Yeah, she will have that verbatim. I think she probably, at some point during the feast, jots notes down. It's not mentioned, but I just picture her
with always like a notebook next to her, like
yeah.
taking notes.
And
furiously.
So she just jots some notes down.
Whoa.
Probably writes the whole speech out. Writes out the Sorting Hat song. Writes out the school song.
Well, I bet she doesn't write down the Sorting Hat song because she's still standing. They haven't
I
been
meant when
sorted
she
yet.
gets back to the table.
Oh,
That's
she'll
her
have-
download time
that's
to get
right.
everything into the notebook.
That's right. How disappointed do you think she was then at Dumbledore's forward speech?
Well, her writing hand probably wasn't too upset, but she was probably upset.
Right. Another funny thought I had was Harry turned his teacher's wig blue. I think that's funny.
Yeah.
One that he has a teacher who wears a wig. I just find that funny for some reason. And then he randomly turned it blue. I have no other comments. It's just
Yeah. I do like the nonchalant throwback to the Harry's magicalness as he was growing up without realizing it. It's like how could he justify that in his head when he was
funny.
however old, 8 years old, whenever
Yes.
this happened? Like, no, that just happens all the time around me. Apparently, no
Right.
one else.
Right. Another one is Peeves drops the walking sticks. Not on everybody's head.
Just Neville.
Just Neville.
Yeah.
It figures.
Yeah.
There's always one.
It's pretty clear he's got some kind of bullseye on him
Right?
with no one really trying for there to be one.
It's rough. Poor
It's-
Neville.
Just pretty unlucky.
Yeah. I feel bad for that kid. Alright. The next one is there are 24 first-year students named at this point. Is that the total of all the first years? Or are those just the ones that are named and Harry in his wanderness didn't notice some of the other ones?
I bet there were other ones that were named that Harry, being nervous and distracted, didn't hear. Especially like after when Malfoy was sorted and he watches Malfoy walk to the Slytherin table to join Crabbe and Goyle. There might have been 2 or 3 in that. I mean, sorting hat popped through a couple of them pretty quick. He definitely could have missed a few.
He could have. I just wonder, as we continue reading, if we should keep track of anyone we hear that wasn't, like, that's in one of these first year classes that wasn't mentioned in this sorting.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we can make a note of it. Of hey, they're the same year, but we didn't hear them get sorted. That's noteworthy, I would say.
Okay. And my last thought. So the Great Hall, the initial description of it, when Harry first walks in with the candles floating and the tables, it is majestic. And even after all these years of reading it, every time I read that description, I think, we're here.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
that opening, like this moment, that first initial look at the Great Hall. This is what Hogwarts is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really have walked into. Hey, there's magic everywhere. I mean, even in Diagon Alley, you don't get quite that same level of full immersion. Definitely,
Mm-hmm.
And it's still pretty.
It still
all
sends chills every
Yeah.
time I read it, and I mean, it's been how many readings, how many years of
Mhm.
reading these books? Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and that actually leads me right into my very first point: is let the real magic begin. Not this, I accidentally turned my teacher's wig blue
And landed
didn't
on
even
a roof.
realize it, or
And I'm on a roof. Oops! Don't
Yeah.
know. I jumped really hard.
oh, the wind caught me. No, it's we're doing true hardcore magic from here on out, and it's I don't know. I get that same exact
Yes.
goosebumps feeling of this is what we've been working up to for the first 6 chapters, and it's all systems go from here.
I agree.
So what if the sorting was really to pull a rabbit out of the hat or to wrestle a troll? Think of how different that could be.
Well, if you have to pull a rabbit or a variety of whatever you want out of the hat, it sounds difficult, especially if you listen to Percy's conversation with Hermione about how transfiguration is turning this into that, but you start off really small, turning, what did he say, matchsticks into pin cushions, or like pins or something like that. So I don't think that Hogwarts would expect anything that crazy because they know the magical limitations of their untrained newbies. but at the same time, it'd be really fun to watch.
Yeah.
Wrestling a troll sounds dangerous and would question the safety.
And how are you gonna like? You like look at like the different styles of wrestling that they try to sort of like. What would
Or
the
what if it's
criteria
just like,
be?
okay, stand in front, use your wand, do something magic, and you're like,
What?
something magic?
Right.
Huh? What is that you say? Can I just like wave and smile? I got nothing.
Another thing about the sorting that so Hermione definitely has read Hogwarts: A History. She says that.
Front, back, cover.
So
Front,
does
forward,
she
backward.
just not mention that she knows what the sorting is, or is it not mentioned in the book Hogwarts: A History?
Well, it doesn't say, but I assume that it's not mentioned. Here's why I think that. Ron doesn't know what the sorting ceremony is. And that's my reason. Because he has 2 parents who went to Hogwarts and 5 older brothers. And you're telling me
There was no offhand comment.
Not once anybody anywhere said, oh yeah, the sorting hat.
Hey, you remember what the sorting hat said?
I feel like it's like a keep the secret
Sure.
kind of a thing.
Sure.
You know?
It's more fun that way.
Yes.
I'm just a little surprised that a book specifically about the history of Hogwarts.
But I think that's why.
Yeah.
Because it's you
so
keep
she just
the
doesn't
history.
know.
Right.
Okay. No, I that's
because so kids like Hermione can't find out beforehand.
Yeah, that's what I would prefer it to be.
Me
I
too. Done.
I thought it was interesting.
Okay, poof. That's what it is.
Yeah. All right.
Decision made. What's next?
Rewritten. Which song do you like better, the Sorting Hat song or the Hogwarts school song? Hogwarts, Hogwarts, Hoggy, Warty, Hogwarts. Teach us something, please. Whether we be old and bald or young with scabby knees, our heads could do with filling with some interesting stuff. For now they're bare and full of air, dead flies and bits of fluff. So teach us things worth knowing, bring back what we've forgot. Just do your best, we'll do the rest, and learn until our brains all rot.
I feel like the Sorting Hat song has more of a wow factor. Because my theme of the night is there are singing hats. Because it is one thing to have the entire school sing the school song to their very own choice of melody. Thank you. And I appreciate that. But you have a slew of first years in front of you who've never been here, have no idea what's going on, and the hat sings. That's really cool. It's very different. It was, when you first read it, it is so unexpected. If you have never read anything about Harry Potter, if you've never seen the movies, if you've never seen a picture, and you open this book and you're like, okay, they're going to sort. You have no idea what's going to happen. And not only do you have to put on a magic talking hat, it's not just talks, it sings. And has really good stuff to say.
Yeah, he goes through the whole differences of the 4 houses. And he kind of even mentions how, hey, I'm a pretty smart hat.
Right.
Like, he's aware of how cool he is.
Keep your top hats on something in your bowler hats.
Yep, sure does.
Yeah,
you
like
can keep your bowlers black.
He compares himself, the hat it is. The hat compares himself to the other kinds of hats. And while they're all okay, they are nothing compared to me. You can keep those, you can keep the top hats, you can keep your bowler hats, but I am a thinking cap.
Mm-hmm.
It's very self-promoting. Yeah. Good job, Sorting Hat. Good job.
I think I like the house, the school song a little bit better because of the everyone choosing their own melody. It's just funny.
Now, so jumping off of that, would you have liked it as much if it wasn't ended with the Weasley's funeral dirge?
No, that makes the whole thing.
That's the difference.
It really does, and I think what we're coming down to is the performance of the two is what's making the difference, not so much the songs themselves.
Yes,
they're pretty similar. I
right.
mean, they're both kind of silly and are just kind of there to let you know what's going on, but it's the actual performance that is the real difference between the two.
Right.
So along with our discussion we had about potentially outgrowing wands as you grow up because your personality can change, is there potential for someone to end up needing to switch houses because their personality changes, or does the Sorting Hat know so deep down, the characteristic is within you that's just not going to change?
I'm pondering. I guess my thoughts on this would be, I feel like too much stock is put into house characteristics, because I would almost think, like McGonagall said, I liked her description really well. She says, the Sorting Hat is a very important ceremony because, while you are here, your house will be something like your family within Hogwarts. You will have classes with the rest of your house, sleep in your house dormitory, and spend free time in your house common room. The 4 houses are called Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Each house has its own noble history, and each has produced outstanding witches and wizards. While you are at Hogwarts, your triumphs will earn you house points, while any rule breaking will lose house points. At the end of the year, the house with the most points is awarded the House Cup, a great honor. I hope each of you will be a credit to whichever house becomes yours. Nothing in her description talks about how only brave people go into Gryffindor and only loyal people go into Hufflepuff. Because I feel like that closes them off a little bit. She talked about put in a family. And to me, that's what the houses probably really are. So you get put in a family, you get put with older kids who are going to watch out for the little kids, you get put with people you're going to go to class with, and you might be sorted with people who are at least similar so that there's not a whole bunch of animosity within a room, but no two people are alike, so they're not all going to be one way, and they're all going to have parts of the other attributes because people are complex. So I feel like, well, you could be sorted into several houses based on the complexity of your personality. The house you're in is the house you're in because that's your family. You might have a family where one person is very, very different than the rest of you. You could have, 3 kids and one of them could be completely different than the others and not quite fit in, but that's still family. You might not quite fit in with, the image of what a Gryffindor or what a Slytherin is, but at the end of the day, you're still part of that family. That would be my random thought.
Okay, I guess my point to that is the Sorting Hat seems to think a little differently. He seems to clearly distinguish between the houses. That may just be for his own artistic license in the song. It's very possible.
I mean, he only has maybe 2 minutes to perform.
And he also is one that does the sorting as well.
Also true.
So that's kind of where I was looking at it from, of he's the one that does the sorting, and he focuses only on those differences. And I'm sure, yes, children are a lot more complicated than that. Mm-hmm. They're more than just one personality trait. So I don't know. It was just kind of a, do you think there's a potential for someone wanting or needing to switch later on?
I mean, it could probably happen. I would just hope that it wasn't because of, oh, you're not brave, so you have to leave, or
sure, that
it was more of a, I don't know,
okay,
mutual kind of best fit for everybody kind of thing.
Do you think any other students had actual input into their own house selection like Harry did?
Well, Neville sat for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I would assume he had some input. I wouldn't necessarily say a say, because he doesn't seem strong enough in his own personality.
He's not assertive enough to really try to dictate.
Right, or to be able to even, defend himself or put himself out there. But I definitely think there were things he was communicating.
Sure, yeah.
So I would assume you have that option.
Yeah, I would think so. Speaking of Neville, his childhood seems to have really been pretty rough.
Well, he was raised by his gran, so that immediately leads to the question of where are his parents.
Right, so that's pretty tough to start off with.
She seemed a little tough in the Hogwarts station.
And it seems to be followed up with kind of how he was talking about her.
Right. And then Great Uncle Algie, who hung him out of windows and
tossed him off the pier.
Right.
I mean, like, there's a good discussion you can have on nature versus nurture, but sometimes it just doesn't. You try to force nature so hard that, or you try to force nurture so hard that it just overrides any nature you might have.
Exactly.
And it just, I think he's kind of suffering from that. If he was put in maybe a different situation, maybe he could have thrived a little bit. And,
right. Maybe parents who saw him for who he is.
More support than forcing.
Right. Because it almost seems like they're trying to force him to be this magical whatever.
Instead of just letting it develop on its own.
Which obviously probably would have, because it happened.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't happen on their timeline.
Right.
Which is unfortunate for him. Because you can see it in his personality, how nervous and worried and scared.
Yeah, it shows.
It comes across.
It looks like you can worry a little bit less about the food offerings on the train with the absurd amount of food that's available at this feast. It makes
me hungry.
It does, but at the same time, it's like, man, if they fed them on the train,
maybe
they'd probably be getting all sick at the feast.
Or maybe it's, hey, we know they didn't eat on the train.
Okay.
Because do you think they're going to eat like that every day? Because it's called the feast. So is there a feast every day, or is this just the welcome back feast?
I would say this is a beginning of the school year party to get everyone, especially with new students coming in, and it's going to be a pretty joyous occasion with, hey, I haven't seen my friends in a couple months.
Yes.
So I think it's not going to be an everyday thing, I hope.
Well, that is a lot of food that they are using.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, that's really all the notes that I have. Let's get into your 5 burning questions for this chapter.
Right. So my first question is, what tune would you use to sing the school song?
So I think I would try to sing the song to a different tune specifically for that. Make it up on the spot each year. Maybe spend the summer ahead of time coming up with a new one, working on it.
If I know you, Luke, you'd spend the summer ahead of time coming up with it.
I'd probably have a few different rough drafts each year, and
I of course would have forgotten about it.
Yeah.
And would have nailed it on like a fly.
Yeah.
I tend to roll like that.
Yeah. It's a good question.
Question 2. It's a 2-parter. What house would you want to be sorted into? And do you think that is actually the house you would be in?
The house that I want to be sorted into, I'm pretty sure is the house that I would actually be sorted into. And I'm pretty sure I would be sorted into Ravenclaw, and I feel like you are the exact same. So
yeah, I definitely want to be in Ravenclaw. That's
Gryffindor wouldn't be bad,
and Hufflepuff wouldn't be. I think I'd be better off in Hufflepuff than Ravenclaw, or not.
Than Gryffindor.
I'd be better off in Hufflepuff than Gryffindor because, well, I can do some things that are kind of big personality things. At the same time, I'm not one to sort of jump headfirst into something like the Gryffindors are.
Yeah,
I'm more of like the hard worker and put things in. But I also think, like, I try very hard to be intelligent. I worked very hard in school. I worked very hard. I was always the kid who got things really, really quickly. I'm like the Hermione. I was always the Hermione Granger of the group. And while she's in Gryffindor, I think I lack that sort of courage piece that,
sure.
or I think that I value more in the intellect part than the other one.
Yeah, I definitely value the intellect portion first, but I think I would much quicker go into Gryffindor than I would to Hufflepuff. I do tend to be okay with being in the front of the room, center of the stage, whatever it is. Not saying that, not so much a performing thing, but I'm okay with being loud and putting myself out there and taking lead on things. And
see, I don't mind being the leader. I don't like doing things that are scary.
Yeah,
and
that doesn't bother
scary.
me.
I don't do scary.
Me.
I can do leader. I don't do scary.
Sure.
Question 3. Could Harry's fear of not being sorted actually happen to someone? Not specifically saying, could it happen to Harry, because obviously he did. But is it possible that a kid would show up at Hogwarts, put the hat on, and never get a house? And if so, what would happen?
Maybe we didn't see some when Harry was gazing around the room.
I feel like if somebody...
It would have been a bigger deal.
That would have been news.
Yeah, I don't think it really happens. I think once you get to this point, you've already been accepted to the school. They have a pretty good feeling that you're a magical student. And I think worst comes to worst, you're just going to get put into Hufflepuff.
When in doubt.
That's kind of the catch-all one.
Question number 4. How did the fat lady get the job as the Gryffindor Tower Guard? Is there a portrait training program?
I hope so. It seems like a pretty important job.
You don't just randomly throw a portrait up there?
I hope not. That would be... Seems like that would be fairly irresponsible if that would happen.
I would agree with that. Or desperate, if you're just randomly throwing things up there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you think all the other houses have a portrait, or is that just a specific Gryffindor thing? We have no idea where they live. We just know Gryffindors.
Yeah, I would assume there's some sort of password or
protected kind of like...
Yeah, similar to Diagon Alley or talking to the portrait.
Some sort of entrance requirement.
There's some sort of magical entrance requirement.
Okay.
Yes. What that could be, I don't know. I would hope they're different, because then you could just start walking around the castle talking to portraits. If you knew that that's how you got into yours, you might accidentally get into another one.
Hi, can I get in? Hi, can I get in? Hi, can I get in?
Especially if they said password.
Right. Talk about giving away an entrance.
Right. Hey, hang out next to that one for like the next day. When you see someone actually go up and get in, you're like, oh, well, I know how to get into wherever they just went.
Sweet. And my last question is, what is the significance of Harry's dream?
So, the dream sequence goes like this. Perhaps Harry had eaten a bit too much because he had a very strange dream. He was wearing Professor Quirrell's turban, which kept talking to him, telling him he must transfer to Slytherin at once because it was his destiny. Harry told the turban he didn't want to be in Slytherin. It got heavier and heavier. He tried to pull it off, but it tightened painfully. And there was Malfoy laughing at him as he struggled with it. Then Malfoy turned into the hook-nosed teacher, Snape, whose laugh became high and cold. There was a burst of green light, and Harry woke, sweating and shaking. He rolled over and fell asleep again, and when he woke the next day, he didn't remember the dream at all. So we do see some similarities to the reoccurring dream that Harry had growing up with the green light and the cold laugh.
Yes.
So, and we also see some contributions from a few things that we encountered today at dinner. And prior, with getting into a fight with Malfoy and not being very nice to each other, and
right.
Snape being involved.
With the weird feeling when he looked at him.
Right, and Quirrell's turban, which is absurd, being mixed with the Sorting Hat itself.
Which is new, because he wasn't wearing that when he met him a month ago at Diagon Alley. Because he had noticed
right.
the turban being new.
Right. So I think
it might just be like him being tired and sleepy and
it's a long day.
Nervous.
I mean, he got up several hours early before they even drove 2.5 hours to the train station.
Right.
So he's been up since I think it was 5 in the morning.
Something similar
that morning. So it's been a long day, and traveling. If you've traveled much, it takes it out of you. Just getting places and excitement all day long too, with all these new things and the candies, and so he's on a sugar rush. Crashes, has a big dinner.
Crashes
with a lot of desserts
and a lot of incoming information.
Yeah, so I think his body is just exhausted and just pulling a lot of things he just encountered today.
All right. Chapter superlatives. We talk about our favorite line. My favorite line is Harry right before he was sorted. And it says, "The hat seemed to be asking a lot. Harry didn't feel brave or quick-witted or any of it at the moment. If only the hat had mentioned a house for people who felt a bit queasy, that would have been the one for him."
That's pretty funny.
That's really funny.
Harry again. He's pretty witty. He's pretty funny.
Good job, JK. Good character development.
Definitely. My favorite line comes from Dumbledore, one of his very, very few and short lines. "Ah, music," he said, wiping his eyes. "A magic beyond all we do here." I like that. I like music. I play music, and it that speaks to me a lot. It's pretty powerful what music can do, and it's unrelated to magic that only wizards can do. You know, it's something even muggles can appreciate.
Well, and this is the second time of being appreciative of something that's not specifically magical because of the lemon drops.
Right.
Way back in chapter 1.
Yeah.
He obviously has an understanding of the muggle world enough to know that that's something that we can enjoy even being magicians.
Definitely.
So then that leads us to our chapter MVP, and that is the character that we feel stands out the most and has sort of the shining moment in the chapter. And for me, it is, of course, Singing Hat. The Sorting Hat deserves my MVP because it is a singing hat. It is your first real moment of, wow, that would never happen. Like, you've gotten a little taste of it with the archway at Diagon Alley, and, you know, maybe you've seen a flying broomstick, but you haven't seen it fly. You've seen the floating candles. But the singing hat is so the ultimate magical world only moment. And he talks. And he's the one who gets to sort them. Like, he's got all the power in this chapter. I like it.
My honorable mention for this chapter, who was in it fairly briefly. We've met him before. Professor Dumbledore. He's got very few lines, but he really does he really just adds to the magicalness of what's going on and how silly it seems that things can be with still being completely mystical, if that makes sense. He talks about music and shows his appreciation for things that muggles can also appreciate as well, which we just talked about. But he also has his, nitwit, blubber, oddment, and tweak comment, which it was a really good moment for Percy and Harry where they have the "is he mad" discussion. Well, no, he's brilliant. But yeah, he might be a little mad too.
So no, but yeah, okay.
I think Dumbledore gets my honorable mention here.
Sounds good. All right, everyone, thank you very much for listening to our recap of Chapter 7. We hope to hear from you, so please send us your digital owl on Twitter at NotNamedPodcast. You can email us at thepodcastthatmustnotbenamed@gmail.com, or you can find us at thepodcastthat.com. We will see you next week when we discuss Chapter 8,
The Potions Master.
Have a great week. Thanks.